You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WYBC. We've got a lot of news to dig into from over the weekend, so without further ado, the government shutdown is almost over. So the Senate is currently going through a number of procedural votes. You say, Tony, how many procedural votes? 8 procedural votes. And they're very, very boring. Now, we do have the team diligently monitoring all of these different procedural votes. Some of them require 60 votes. Some of them require a simple majority of 50 plus tiebreaker. So at this point, we're really looking for kind of the end of a few of these procedural votes. Republican Rand Paul, whose two great talents include being pretty decent on what government spending should be, and then also complaining when it's time to be pragmatic and actually get things moved forward. So Rand Paul's holding things up a little bit. That all goes to say that by the end of, I'd say, Wednesday, Thursday, perhaps, you're likely to see the House brought into session, and the bill, after leaving the Senate and its 8 wonderful procedural votes, heads over to the House. They will end up signing it because there's a lot of Republicans in House districts and Democrats in House districts that would like to be elected in 2026. And then that is going to be signed. And presto, the government will reopen its doors and will start the process of detoxing all of the weird bumps and knots and kinks in the long rope of government garbage. So there's a lot on that line. May I just hit you with, of course, a fantastic clip of the very moment that the Democrats that flaked away, which I will say, get a coin for the Tony Kinnett was right jar, did say it was coming. Here they are flaking away. You can hear some of the moans and groans from the progressives in the background as that initial vote was passed.
On this vote, the yeas are 60 and the nays are 40. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn, having voted in the affirmative. The motion upon reconsideration is agreed to.
My favorite, old people clapping. All right, now, the Democrats are having a really rough time about this. They're having a really rough time about this because they were standing firm in solidarity and they got nothing. They got nothing. Gene Wilder, you lose. Good day, sir. Now, I have seen some people trying to push back on this claim and say, well, actually, the Democrats, they got 2 things out of their super negotiations. And what they are claiming they got out of the negotiations is number one, that all of the people that the Trump administration laid off during the government shutdown would be brought back, would be rehired, recontracted, that kind of a thing. And then number 2, in December, they would have some kind of a vote, an additional vote, one might say, on giving the Obamacare subsidy some money. This was a handshake agreement, meaning it's just kind of a temporary sort of promise. Now, the Democrats who flaked are currently being yelled at by a lot of very, very young and pronouned people on the left. Blue Sky is a Category 3 toxic zone. You are required to wear personal protection equipment if you go onto the platform because it is just all kinds of angst and anger. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, part-time William Shatner and Barack Obama impersonator, he's really mad. I mean, he's not as mad as Whoopi Goldberg, but I mean, he's kind of mad. He wants some more shutdown.
And so House Democrats and Senate Democrats have been fighting hard to address the Republican health care crisis and to lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans in the United States of America. Because the reality is, America is too expensive. And far too many people are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck.
Now, that's a really wild thing for Hakeem Jeffries to bring before the American people. And allow me to tell you why. The Obamacare program, which I was told, which you were told by Democrats, was going to be the most splendiferous, exciting, super duper, ultra, incredible program that ever programmed. You and I were told that that was going to lower the cost of healthcare. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, Michelle. It was going to be amazing and incredible and wonderful. And then it turned out to make healthcare wildly more expensive, like logarithmically more expensive. And then during the COVID times, Biden said, government, which loosely translated means subsidize Obamacare to give people extra money. Because there's COVID and monkeypox and AIDS, oh my, and it's swirling around. We got to give people extra money. And it turns out people who get government assistance really don't like stopping the receiving of government assistance. And so Democrats have come forward and said everyone's going to die. But of course, holding the entire government hostage over getting additional subsidies for Obamacare is not really a good look at the best of times. And if this sounds difficult for me to explain, here's Tim Kaine, fresh off of the Back to the Future set as Doc Brown, having no idea whatsoever how to answer what the shutdown was for, or if he would do anything different, or if he kissed anyone at prom. It's really weird. Here you go.
Do you wish that you would have started looking for this off-ramp sooner? You said that Republicans were never going to change in their position.
I didn't fully understand how dug in they were, again, because I was so focused on the Virginia elections. I wasn't in this discussion on the healthcare to see how dug in they were. But even as I was not part of these discussions, I was saying to Thune and others on the floor going back, listen, I need, some of you heard me say this in the hall, I need a moratorium on mischief.
A moratorium on mischief. Ah, yes, I need a moratorium on mischief and a flask of photosynthesis. What in the world? What is this nutty professor saying?
I find it so funny. I never realized how dug in the Republicans were. You didn't realize that they wouldn't just let you screw over the American people? Like, do their jobs?
I don't think that he recognized this. By the way, Tim Kaine has the easiest answer of all time. He has the easiest answer. He's in Virginia. He is the senator who presides over, since being a senator is now a big popularity contest, you're just a representative but bigger. As the senator of the Commonwealth of Virginia, he has the most federal workers, period. The most federal workers who are currently laid off, who are not receiving pay. All you had to say is, look, my people in Virginia, I care about them the most. There are times when, here in Indiana, where I'm broadcasting from, when Senator Todd Young or Senator Jim Banks doesn't have the best answer ever to a question. All they have to say is, well, I represent the good people of the state of Indiana, and therefore, or whatever American reason he decides to give. Tim Kaine had that example. He had that reason, but he can't just say that, because then he has to admit complicity in being one of the people that kept his own constituents in Virginia from receiving their paychecks. So then we get to Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin is one of the Democrats who broke away. So there were really 8.5 Democrats who ended up flaking. I say the half because technically Senator Angus King is an independent. He caucuses with the Democrats, though. So yeah, he's an independent, just like Bernie Sanders is definitely an independent.
Independently Democrat.
Yeah, independently Democrat, exactly. That brings us to the other Democrats, Senator Kathy Cortez Masto of Nevada, which we knew because she, like John Fetterman and Angus King, were always voting to reopen the government. Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, we'll get to him. Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire. And then Tim Kaine of Virginia. Of course, Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada. Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. There are likely to be a couple others that end up flaking away. If John Ossoff actually remains resolute through all of the procedural votes, I'd be a little surprised, because he and Warnock voted in favor of paying the troops. Georgia's not as safe for the Democrats as they'd like to think going into 26. That said, Velma from Scooby-Doo over on MSNBC has released the goods here, which is apparently that this was all about the master plan of winning elections in Virginia, which I would assume, definitely this, I don't think this moved the needle for elections in like New Jersey or the Pennsylvania Supreme Court retention. But here's the master strategist straight out of Scooby-Doo.
It's strange, Dean, to go back to the original sort of part of this conversation of whether he is a good deal maker. I mean, in a way, it seems like the president is kind of getting what he wanted 40 days ago when all this started. He was out there saying that, oh, this is all about Democrats trying to give health care to illegal immigrants. He just said that to reporters moments ago.
Man, the president hasn't changed his messaging because that's what he believes. Oh, man, I'm so used to Karine Jean-Pierre getting up dressed like Al Capone and saying something completely different than she said the day before. Radio crew, We're going to suffer through this on the live stream a little bit. We know you have to head over to the commercial break. Hey, watch the live stream so you don't have to deal with commercial breaks. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. See you after your commercial. All right, while the nerds are suffering through their FCC-mandated commercial and PSA time, Velma.
Heeded that refrain. The Democrats had actually very successfully pushed back against. Then there's all this energy.
Did she just say successfully pushed back against? I don't know about that.
In the wake of the election on Tuesday, the president made remarks saying basically, wow, Republicans are being harmed by all of this, acknowledging that he was on his back foot. And
saying that Republicans were also harmed by the government shutdown does not mean that the Democrats did not harm themselves even greater. Guys, as I pointed this out during the polling, people like to say, guys, look, voters say 65% of people believe that Republicans are 53% as likely to be responsible for the shutdown. That's a stupid way to read polls. Don't read polls like that. The approval ratings for both parties sunk during the government shutdown. People don't like it when you pay a plumber to come in and do a job and then he takes a nap on your couch. People don't care for that. And by the way, as far as the argument to be made, did the government shutdown help Democrats in Virginia? Yeah, but also, other than that, heading into 2026 thinking that the people are just going to forget that you wiped SNAP benefits into next week. And that brings us to why Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, straight from the crypts of Egypt, broke away. He was here on the Senate today saying something I don't think he was supposed to say this openly.
Many of my friends are unhappy. They think we should have kept our government closed indefinitely to protest the policies of the Trump administration.
True. That is what they said they wanted to do, keep the government closed to protest Trump.
I share their opinions of this administration, but cannot accept a strategy which wages political battle at the expense of my neighbor's paycheck or the food for his children.
Correct. And for all the Democrats who've tried to come out since and say it was Republicans who wanted to starve people because Donald Trump wouldn't order Secretary Rollins of the Department of Agriculture to give the $6 billion in emergency contingency to pay for just over half of one SNAP payment. And then what, when the government reopens, have to then refill that particular contingency? None of the common sense thinking, the 2 + 2 = 4 kind of thinking made its way into this whatsoever. And from this point forward, I should point out, Joe Scarborough was on MSNBC this morning. I didn't even think of admitting something this dumb on the air, that the reason Democrats shut the government down was to get crime off of the front page of the newspapers.
The Democrats is they took crime off the front page of every newspaper. And that was the story. And they turned it into health care.
That's some 10 out of 10 stuff there, Joe. Appreciate that. The RNC appreciates your campaign donation. Now, this brings us down to Chuck Schumer under fire. But before we get to that, I do want to point out again, Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania is yet again Senator Fetterman. He posted, quote, "After 40 days as a consistent voice against shutting our government down, I voted yes for the 15th time to reopen. I'm sorry to our military, SNAP recipients, government workers, and Capitol Police who haven't been paid in weeks. It never should have come to this. This was a failure. I made a prediction a little bit ago that by the 2026 midterms, or at least the end of the year 2026, John Fetterman would no longer be in the Democrat Party. The left is outraged at John Fetterman. And who's his ally right now? Well, believe it or not, here's Laura Trump, former co-chair of the RNC.
I actually sat down with Senator Fetterman, and I find that he probably has more in common with Donald Trump than he does with any of the Democrats in his party. He's very common sense. He's very straightforward. He wants to do the right thing, and they just can't do that anymore in the Democrat Party. And that's so unfortunate, because if I were the leader of that party, I would say this is the kind of individual I want to have. This is somebody who makes sense and who the American people feel like actually has their best interest in heart. And I can tell you, the people of Pennsylvania, I sure feel that way about John Fetterman.
We're going to bring the radio crew back from commercial because it is not looking good for the Schumer and progressive side of things, believe it or not. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
It is the 50th anniversary of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. That is, of course, the legendary Gordon Lightfoot. Rest in peace. And I believe you told me the Maritime Sailors Cathedral in Detroit, normally, which rings 29 times on the anniversary of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, that it rang 30 times this year, the extra ring of the gong, or the bell, for, of course, Gordon Lightfoot, which is, again, for those of us in, the Great Lakes region, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I mean, my dad told me about the gales of November, remember, when I was a kid, and we're not even that close to...
It was a part of our school's curriculum.
Oh, that's right. It was a part of the school's curriculum. So the Edmund Fitzgerald, the 50th today, just something to note here on the show. Meanwhile, Democrats are really, really, really struggling with Chuck Schumer. They don't know which way to go. And I don't mean that behind closed doors, they kind of know which way to go. There was an argument that Chuck Schumer kind of gave the nod to some Democrats to just go ahead and reopen the government. From what we are getting out of Axios, that's not true. Finally, there were Democrats that just said, Chuck, you're out of touch. You're out of time. And after singing a rousing verse of the greatest Hall & Oates song, ended up flaking away and voting alongside the right. And for Chuck Schumer, he has to be the one who has now brought the entire party through a shutdown that got them nothing. They are, in fact, the ones who have caved. And who's the angriest about this? It's his own party members. Here's Ro Khanna of California, who really, really wants to be the next Speaker of the House, desperately. He wants to get out there and be presented as the new progressive sort of populist-y leader. He doesn't really know what he is in a lot of ways, but he's out here saying that Chuck Schumer's leadership has failed.
I think the point he makes there, too, about Chuck Schumer refusing to even say who he voted for in New York City, I think it's an important one as well. Because if you're going to be a leader of the Democratic Party, and the Democratic base is saying, hey, this is Zohran Mamdani. This is our guy. Like, we like this guy. We like the direction he's going. We're going to vote for him in the primary. We're going to show up in record-breaking numbers to vote for him in the general election, make sure that he wins. And you can't even say that you voted for the Democratic candidate. I mean, how out of step are you with your own voters in the party, let alone, your own caucus, let alone, colleagues such as you?
By the way, I just want to make this clear because this is a Breaking Point. I can't remember the name of the host of Breaking Points. If at any point I ever start talking in that modern transatlantic monotone reporter or anchor style voice when I'm talking to people in interviews, you have just every right. Just go ahead and throw me out, toss me into the garbage bin. I failed. Listening to that, it hurts me. But hopefully she'll let Ro answer at some point.
But he's also, and most importantly, wildly out of step with where his own voters are within the Democratic Party.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, look, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. You had Chuck Schumer cheerleading into the war in Iraq. You've had Chuck Schumer cheerleading for a blank check to Netanyahu. You've had Chuck Schumer betraying us on the first shutdown. You then had Chuck Schumer given multiple opportunities after Zohran won the primary to at least endorse him, even if it was a pro forma endorsement. You
hear that gripe about Zohran Mamdani.
He doesn't do that. And now he's not even willing to fight to make sure that the ACA subsidies don't increase. So to your earlier question about...
Great stuff. So really hilarious. By the way, not only over in the House, where you have people like Representative AOC saying, people want us to hold the line for a reason. This is not a matter of appealing to a base. It's about people's lives. Not enough to, reopen the government for SNAP benefits or anything like that. But, and she's got to get out there and pretend that she cares about the working people.
They continually phrase it as if they suffer at all. Hold the line. You have no suffering comes upon you by doing this. You're deciding it for your constituents.
Yeah, and then you have Bernie Sanders. He gets out and said, this is a bad night for America. I woke up this evening and there was no tapioca in my pudding. It was vanilla. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Bernie Sanders, he's got a little bit of the chutzpah here for the American people.
Tonight, 8 Democrats voted with the Republicans to allow them to go forward on this continuing resolution. And to my mind, this was a very, very bad vote. What it does, first of all, is it raises healthcare premiums for over 20 million Americans by...
No, it does not. The bill itself does not raise the premiums. It allows external subsidies that the Biden administration threw during COVID for Obamacare, which sucks. It is a badly written program. The Affordability Care Act is not affordable, and they don't care. So now he's mad that it takes additional money to act on fixing this garbage fest. But again, it's so hilarious to watch him pretend to care about healthcare when every country this has been tried rockets the cost of said healthcare by 10, 15, 20, 30 times.
Doubling, and in some cases tripling or quadrupling. People can't afford that when we are already paying the highest prices in the world for healthcare. Number two, it paves the way for 15 million people to be thrown off of Medicaid in the Affordable Care Act. Studies show that will mean that some 50,000 Americans will die every year unnecessarily.
So first of all, that's not true. Second of all, about the Americans comment, it's really interesting listening to him complain about Americans not having enough of the share of government spending when he's one of the people that is currently advocating for illegal immigrants to remain on either receiving through fungible trade or directly in places like California or Minnesota, Affordability Care Act dollars. And this gets worse for Chuck Schumer. Seth Moulton, another Democrat member of the House, he was up in arms over Chuck Schumer. We're not going to play his clip. We might come back to it later. But that brings us to the state of the Democrat Party. They're not only turning against Chuck Schumer, they are already paying the price for making really, really bad choices. And this comes in two flavors. First of all, you have idiots like Jasmine Crockett, who are now out here saying that she doesn't trust Dominion voting. To quote Michael Scott, well, how the turntables. Jasmine Crockett.
We do know that one of his friends has purchased Dominion. So it's going to be really important for us to educate all states that we can to make sure that their Secretary of States are like, we don't want the Dominion machines.
Wait a minute. I thought it was like a deeply unpatriotic thing to go out and have your Secretary of State say that you don't trust certain companies or organizations and their voting machines. Weren't there like big, massive honking lawsuits over this, one might say?
Because I personally believe that ally purchased Dominion so that he could potentially play with the machines, because we know that they're trying to cheat by changing the lines for the midterms. And I think that they're trying to solidify their cheat potentially.
Okay, all right. So he's going to cheat by redrawing the lines that he's not even redrawing the lines of. Ignore Gavin over there with Prop 50. Then he's going to cheat by having the National Guard, I guess, stand next to voting booths or whatever, according to the ladies on The View. And then he's going to cheat by rigging the voting machine. At some point, you really need to stop just licking leftover aluminum foil after Thanksgiving. Now, I would say, that I'm really joking here. No, there's an actual Democrat radio host, Stephanie Miller, who actually went to kiss and lick the sneakers of Jasmine Crockett today. She said, why, yes, I did kiss the sneakers of Jasmine Crockett, and I do worship the ground she walks on. And she was like lovely about it. That's from her Twitter. I added the little like in there. Yet again, the year of the Democrat Karen, the liberal middle-aged woman. Yet again, my argument that women on the right, as they age, are like a fine wine that grow sweeter. And Democrat women are like vinegar left out in the sun. So, radio crew, we got to send you to commercial and talk about some Zohran Mamdani scandals, guys. It's here. It's equitable. And my, oh my, you can eat it with your hands. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. Zohran Mamdani, in the last 48 hours, has now essentially had to admit, or has been slapped down by people like Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, there is going to be no minimum wage increase. That's a no on that one. So no minimum wage increase.
But at least there'll be free bus rides, right? Please. Free public transit.
Are there going to be free bus rides? Again, that's going to be a no. All right.
Government-run grocery stores, though?
Is he government-run grocery stores? No. And by the way, there is, in fact, now apparently him trying to, there's a micro investigation that's currently going on suggesting that Zohran might be attempting to artificially place his cousins like run-down grocery store as the model that New York City uses for some kind of state-run grocery stores. Now, hang on, because there's one more thing here. Elie Bisgard Church. You say, who the heck is that? Well, I'll let him introduce her first and then see if he gets her background correct here.
And I would now like to introduce my Chief of Staff, Elie Bisgard Church.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor-elect.
Okay.
My name is Elie Bisgard Church.
Okay.
And I am so proud to stand here to accept the role as Chief of Staff for the incoming Mamdani administration.
Now, what has she done? What has she done in the past? Because at Chief of Staff, it's a very, very big position. One might say
needs to be very qualified.
One might say a Chief of Staff, somebody a little older, a little more experienced, who isn't going to, make youthful mistakes. Well, I got you here. Elie Bisgard Church is a 34-year-old socialist from California who has never held a real job. The only real job she has ever held as the Chief of Staff is campaigning for Zohran Mamdani. That's it.
Is she highly educated? Spent all those years instead of getting a job, getting a lot of education?
That's actually a good question. Will you look that up for us? I'm kind of curious what education Elie Bisgard Church has. I'm sure whatever it is, it involved classes in gender studies and drum circles and hacky sack prophylactics. The regular stuff. Now, here's the rough part for Zohran. It comes in two beautiful chunks here. First of all, Governor Kathy Hochul of New York. Yeah, she knows that Elise Stefanik is gonna beat her with a knotted plow line if Hochul bends to Zohran's New York socialism campaign. Here's a little bit of that.
Well, I'm from Buffalo. We don't put up with a lot of crap. So I just want to set the stage that, you look at the history of people who've run multi-million-dollar ad campaigns to try and get me to change my position. I don't change my position. So I just want to put it out there. I respect people's opinions. I respect the proper place to convey them. And so I've said to people, I hear you. And that was important. But also, there's a time and place. And so that's all on that. No, I've had conversations on this trip, but many conversations, I'd say over the summer and the fall, that were important, that led to an understanding of what's in the realm of possibility. Shared ambitions, but what is doable is the question. And so, no.
Okay, so to actually get her through the beautiful list of things that it takes her 3 weeks to beat around the bush and get to the point of none of Zohran's big financial programs. He needs approval from the state of New York in order to raise taxes big time. He ain't going to do it. Now, that's really the least of his worries, believe it or not, because a new series of investigations makes it a lot worse. Don't go anywhere. Got to bring the radio crew from commercial. Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Zohran Mamdani, he's got all of the great Stalinist things. He's got the coming out immediately and leaning in on weird ethnicities as the branch for running his new little socialist union. Number two, he's got the nomenklatura. The nomenklatura, what's that? Well, that's the Soviet bureaucracy in which you give all of your special friends really nice jobs, even if they have no experience whatsoever, like your cousin who runs a rundown grocery store as, your model for New York City's possible state-run grocery store system. A communist from California with, you said, 2 MPAs choosing to study taxation.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is she's been quoted as saying, if I'm interested in critiquing and reforming our system of taxation, I better go study formally what a tax is.
Oh my. Okay, a lady who had to go to school to learn what a tax is. A 34-year-old woman from California, no real job ever.
Do you think she's paid a tax?
Do I think she's paid?
She looks at a form and goes, this W-2 is a tax.
She has girl tax, and it's just asking guys to give her money.
She gets a hot dog from a stand in New York and is like, do I need to pay taxes to you?
10 out of 10. Well, this brings us over to the corruption side of things. Zohran Mamdani's political campaign, I know this is going to shock you, may not have been above board whatsoever. I know. I, too, am just shocked that may not have been above board. There's a couple of things. First of all, there is an investigation into Zohran Mamdani's political campaign accepting nearly $13,000 in illegal foreign donations from non-U.S. citizens, which is obviously a violation of U.S. election law. Now, here's the funny thing. The campaign has since stated it intends to return all of the foreign donations and has reportedly returned over $5,000, including a contribution from Mamdani's mother-in-law in Dubai. Most of these donations were received in June before Mamdani's primary win. Here's the issue, though. $5,000, $13,000. If you don't have the ability to, since June, return all of those dollars to foreign sources, that's a little suspicious. Now, apparently on the 30th, they had reported to KATV, that's ABC7, that they had returned $9,000 in foreign donations. However, now that's in dispute because they haven't provided any receipts that show they have actually returned more than $5,000. So that's, again, it's just a couple of $1,000s. I mean, I get that he's really strapped for cash right now.
I pinky promise I returned the money.
Yeah, the pinky that's currently shoveling rice into my mouth. Now, again, he is currently running around asking people for additional donations, which is very weird because his campaign was funded in a large part by CARE and their U.S. political PAC, which may not be a U.S. political PAC at all. Senator Rick Scott of Florida is currently looking into that. And then from the New York Post, a South Asian political machine used foreign influence to tip the scales in Mamdani's favor. The immigrants' right nonprofit, Desis Rising Up and Moving, or DRUM for short, very clever, I guess, and its political arm, Drum Beats, stop it, you people are dumb, have built what insiders call the most effective field operation in city politics in recent memory. And what is this particular city operation to turn out voters? It's social media bots. It's fraud. Yeah, it's click farms. Oh, wait, like what? Oh, you mean like the click farm that was discovered right before the UN that China was installing to possibly take down the New York City cellular network? There are a lot of people who use click farms. There are a lot of people on the right who also dabble in click farms. I hear you. I'm just saying, grassroots campaigns usually don't have to fake engagement. Grassroots campaigns usually don't have to fake grassroots funding. Grassroots campaigns normally aren't taking selfies with Alex Soros. It's really not going to be pretty. When Senator Rick Scott does in fact put the one and only Chuck Grassley on the case, every single document from Mamdani up to and including the Polaroids and apron from his failed rapping career are going to hit the public.
It's already over. The moment that Chuck Grassley hears his name called, he's like, "Oh, you wanted those documents? I've had them in the filing cabinet for 5 years."
He picks up the scent. He's not the senator that we want. He's the senator that we need. I love it. Every single day just gets more enjoyable. This brings us over to the media fun in the sun. Because one of Mamdani's biggest supporters, that which would have been the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, well, they're having a rough one because their Director General, Tim Davie, and their CEO of the news division, Deborah Turnus, have resigned. Why did they resign? Well, because they released a documentary that had maliciously edited footage of Donald Trump on January 6, 2021, to make it sound like he said something he didn't. Or more accurately, they cut out things he had actually said. Here is the footage. First, I'm going to play the edited version with all of their spooky, dramatic documentary music, and then I'll play the actual clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Hang on. That's like really malicious editing. That's not like where you cut him off and then, oh, that's all he said. No, that's just, taking the letters in a magazine and cutting them up and pasting them on a ransom note. That's some no-no territory stuff. So, by the way, Deborah has since yelled at a random reporter which, by the way, in England might even be a crime. I'm not sure everything's a crime unless you have a license for that. Saying there's no institutional bias at the BBC whatsoever.
I would like to say it has been the privilege of my career to serve as the CEO of BBC News and to work with our brilliant team of journalists. I stepped down.
So she's you can see the veins starting to pop out. She said, "This is the pre-prepared statement that I pulled out of my package of crumpets this morning." And then she leans forward and the crazy eye gets a little wilder. And the static electricity picks up a little bit.
Over the weekend, because the buck stops with me. But I'd like to make one thing very clear. BBC News is not institutionally biased. That's why it's the world's most trusted news provider.
By ratings, not even close. Not even close.
Why did you fail
to deal with the mistakes that were made?
And see my teams. Thank you so much.
Right, we're going in now. Do you think that the journalists are institutionally corrupt like President Trump says? Do you think the journalists
our journalists aren't corrupt. Our journalists are hard-working people who strive for impartiality.
By the way, BBC journalists and reporters have, in fact, been caught taking bribes and editing particular pieces of media incorrectly several times over the last decade. So that's a big no on that one. Producer Nick.
We, as a news organization, have the most integrity. Please ignore why I'm stepping down for our malicious lack of integrity.
Excellent stuff. That does bring us over to something that I personally enjoyed out of this whole nonsense. Speaking of federal funding, a Harvard researcher, Joan Brugge, or Brugge, if you're pronouncing it phonetically, she went on 60 Minutes with CBS and made the claim that they, I guess, discovered the cure for breast cancer and then found out that the federal funds were getting cut off. And this is the first that you're hearing about it. Here's Joan Brugless.
If you were talking to the American public, what would your research do for them?
My research has the potential to prevent their daughters and their wives and their cousins from developing breast cancer. And I don't think any taxpayer would want to interfere with progress on a project like that.
Joan Brugge is director of the Ludwig Cancer Center at Harvard Medical School. For 50 years, she has applied for and won competitive federal grants that helped uncover how tumors form and resist treatment, and discovered innovative therapies.
Did I send you that note about
when her $1 million
the B-roll footage where she looks at the camera for I can't stand. It's such clownishness.
Annual funding was canceled last spring. She was leading a team that had identified the earliest precursors of breast cancer.
The ultimate goal is to find a treatment that will eliminate those cells that carry the mutations.
And in effect, prevent the cancer.
Yes, prevent the cancer.
Last spring, you got an email. What did it say?
It listed 2 grants from the National Institute of Health and said that they were terminated.
Terminated?
Terminated.
What went through your mind?
It was just like a gut punch. My knees buckled and I had to sit down because I just never imagined that research focused on a disease like cancer would be canceled for a reason that was unrelated to the quality of the research or the progress of the research. But this was across the board for issues relating to diversity and anti-Semitism.
Can I ask you a question real quick before we send the radio crew to the commercial? Just one question. Why do you need a government grant for that? I'm just saying, if this is like we're right on the cusp of terminating cells before they really get to spreading mutations or to start going through the rapid process of mitosis with the corrupt DNA in them, then wouldn't Alex Soros, wouldn't he be up for the running for pushing some dollars into that? Or Bill Gates, or the massive endowment that Harvard University has? Maybe instead of Harvard sliding money over into its lesbian breakdancing major, maybe you throw money into breast cancer research. Or just reapply for the government grant. If she would have gone public about this then, I'm sure something else would have been made. No, she wants to do the moral... Radio crew, we'll see you guys after the commercial break. We'll be over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, there are other media things that are chef's kiss. First of all, shout out to Scott Jennings, a friend of the show, over on Abby Phillips, for being 100% correct in his predictions like 2 weeks ago about the shutdown and how it's all going to end.
How are Republicans going to use leverage in their fight with Democrats when the Democrats are actually the ones with the upper hand in the eyes of voters?
This is a week ago.
I'm sure Democrats will be more than happy to open the government now. The election's over. I mean, part of the reason they shut it down was to get through tonight.
I mean, I
would suspect they'll be glad to open it up by the end of the week.
Correct. A fine prediction, Scott. Well done. And that brings us over to the other side of the crystal ball. Whoopi Goldberg over on The View, just melting down over all this. Now, we've gotten a couple of questions. People don't really like on the show watching The View. The reason that we do show you The View clips is not just because we enjoy sitting back and watching, Joy Behar foam at the mouth. The reason we watch The View is that our best understanding of the next couple of years of the Democrat Party involved left-leaning, middle-aged women and young women running that party. And so that kind of functions, I would say rather accurately here. Here's Whoopi.
So let us tell you what's been going on. The biggest sticking point in the longest U.S. government shutdown has been Democrats demanding that Republicans negotiate to extend health care subsidies that are about to expire. But last night, 8 Senate Democrats threw in the towel by siding with the GOP to advance a vote that could lead to the government reopening. And they tried to explain themselves to their unhappy colleagues. Take a look.
By the way, let's hear Shaheen.
I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement. But waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome.
This agreement tonight is a win for the American people.
I always forget when Angus King speaks, he looks like he just came out of a cattle ranch from 1823.
Actually, I think he looks like he belongs in a Dr. Seuss movie.
Or is that Walt Disney? I'll say this, though. Clearly, the reason that we are playing views on the show to answer the simple life for me. We loathe entirely The View. Same. I'm trying to get on the show. I'm a woman with a lot of opinions. And every morning when I wake up and I go through aggravated liberal menopause, the first thing I do is turn on The View. And then Sex in the City, because I'm just fun like that.
After your third bottle of Merlot.
After my third bottle of Merlot, absolutely. And then I run around telling everyone how excited I am that I view illegal immigrants as farm equipment, and then talk about how progressive that I am. So really excellent stuff. Yeah, please. The poetry, the beat poetry snaps. Very, very good. We do have a couple of things to get into before the last end here. ABC is now reporting that foreigners with certain health conditions, including obesity, may now be denied U.S. immigrant visas under new guidance by the Trump administration. Good. I don't see the issue with that. Can you imagine the shipping fare to get them over here? I'm sorry, producer Nick.
I mean, Whoopi must be happy. The heavier set ones can't pick as fast.
We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So the left is very, very, very mad. Very mad. Very, very upset. Just deep, deep down that the Trump administration under Marco Rubio may now be including diabetes and obesity as factors in whether or not people applying for visas are rejected. Now, by the way, one of the reasons that is explicitly stated as part of the policy in the State Department is because individuals who are considered more likely to be on SNAP benefits, if you're more likely to come over as an immigrant and be on government assistance, you will be given lower preference. You will be given less attention. You'll be put kind of in the back of the line rather than someone who provides a net good to the United States. And again, it doesn't mean there aren't some very wonderful people who want to immigrate to the country that have certain conditions. No, diabetes and obesity are not the only things on the list. No, I'm sorry, but that's just not the case. Also, according to several sources now, a New York Attorney General, Letitia James, has filed a motion to dismiss the Trump administration's lawsuit against her, calling it, quote, vindictive prosecution. I'm just sorry, one more time here. Calling it vindictive prosecution.
Well, how the turntables.
Exactly. My oh my. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. So that brings us to kind of the last thing, because the left is just having a really rough time. There was this argument right after the elections that the right was going to do some huge soul searching. Now, I think a lot of us have suggested that we focus a little bit more on painting the picture and painting the vision. But was this the end all, destruction? Really what Republicans want is someone more like Chuck Schumer? No. Now, one of the people who has said that the Republican Party really, really needs to change is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And this has not been taken well, because she's not only started getting into more interesting conspiracy theories, but she's also started praising Democrats, because those on the right have, said, I don't think so. Here's The View. Yeah, The View praising old MTG.
Out of there. And that's why when you said Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm happy to say that she's going to be here on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's election day.
Because
it happens to be election day.
And I don't know how many things we agree on, but I know the one thing that she and I and all of us at this table agree on is this should not be affecting the American people. This is...
Yeah. All right. Now, here's the fun thing. She has since come out, Marjorie Taylor Greene, talked to reporters claiming to be the only Republican who really cares about the people. She's St. Teresa wrapped up in a Georgian representative.
Talk about how much have you heard from people, about your constituents, about affordability issues, and what are you doing to try and keep costs low, across the board?
Yeah, it's something we hear about every single day. So under the Biden administration, it was in 2022, we saw inflation hit a 40-year high at 9%.
Correct.
And these prices have not come back down. I give the President Trump as his administration, they're holding it right now at 2.5%. That's pretty much the average. And that's a good thing. However, life is unaffordable. And with the health insurance crisis coming that will start January 1st with these new premiums.
Here's the issue.
And credit card debt is at an all-time high. With our economy having some softening, which we could see possibly a recession, these are alarm bells for me, and they're blaring so loud. I've been talking about affordability for months now.
She has not, by the way.
But I think I'm the only Republican that's been talking about it.
No. Not even remotely true, but we'll give her the fair shake here. We'll address her points here in a second. We'll let her finish.
And I think it's a crisis, and I just think it is a complete failure on both sides of the aisle for anybody that serves in Congress to allow this to happen to them.
Okay, so first of all, no. As far as the argument she's making that it's the premiums that are skyrocketing that's going to hurt Americans, she proposes more government intervention in healthcare. She has proposed more populist left-leaning actions to grip the economy. She hasn't criticized the areas of policy of the Trump administration that really has to do with investment and finance. She's criticized the Trump administration's take on Israel, as though Israel is secretly draining all of the dollars away from the United States. That's just a lie. Now, look, we could play a lot of clips of her saying rather objectively kooky things on various interviews, things of that nature. I'm less interested in her kind of going off the beaten path and calling everyone in the Republican Party that doesn't agree with her on Israel a pedophile. Instead, I would like to play the president's response today. Caitlin Collins pitches the question to him. This is the kind of the curbing of those who are going out glad-handing and grandstanding about how they're so wonderful and forgetting there's, work to be done.
In a meeting with the Syrian president earlier today, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a big ally of yours, said that she would rather see you focused on nonstop domestic policy meetings here at the White House instead of nonstop foreign policy meetings. What's your response to her saying that, and also saying that grocery prices are up and not down, as you've said?
Yeah, so I don't know what happened to Marjorie. She's a nice woman, but I don't know what happened. She's lost her way, I think. But I have to view the presidency as a worldwide situation, not locally. I mean, we could have a world that's on fire where wars come to our shores very easily if you had a bad president.
This is the isolationism point that President Trump is not, that from all appearances, Vice President J.D. Vance is not. We're going to get to that, and get to that after he finishes his statement here.
We had a horrible president, and we ended up with Russia, Ukraine, and we ended up with other disasters, too. Don't forget, I put out 8 wars, 9 to come. I think I'll get the other one taken care of, but I put out 8 wars. And look at the damage that Russia, Ukraine has done to us as a country. I mean, we spent $350 billion. We're not spending any money anymore. Now they pay us through NATO, you know.
Now, we're going to kind of go through the ins and outs of why there's a little of this schism here. There is this argument that has popped up on some parts of the right that has suggested that any U.S. involvement in foreign policy is throwing away all of our money. And that's just not the case. I mean, objectively, the data, according to the congressional budget, that's not the case. The idea that if the president of the United States threatens India and Pakistan and says, "Get back in your corners or I'm going to slap you like Will Smith on stage," then no, that's not the president starting wars. That's the president recognizing the leverage the American economy and the military have, and then saying, if you're going to play, you're going to play by my rules. It's more Teddy Rooseveltian. It's not this hyper-isolationism. We got to send the radio crew off to the end of things this evening. We'll catch them later and continue on the live stream for a bit of bonus tonus. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, now, for those on the live stream, quickly here. Marjorie Taylor Greene had what I believe a pretty decent start, a rise in the MAGA movement, where she got out and she said that the president is right. He's being unduly prosecuted. There's a lot of people who are being hurt by the Biden administration. Inflation is really bad. That was a lot of what she built her campaign around. Those are good things. Those are accurate things. Also accountability. You can see her arguing with Jasmine Crockett in the oversight committee more often than not. And those are very good things. However, when you spend all of your time online watching various podcasts and you get into the zone of just ardent conspiracy theories instead of actually doing what you were sent to Congress to do, you become guilty of the same stuff that you accuse the left of. Because through the shutdown, we accused the left, accurately, of being more convinced about all these conspiracy theories and these wild demands that they had, rather than actually coming to the table and doing what we are paying you for. And the arguments that she's made that actually the Trump administration is this all some grand cover up for the Epstein files, and maybe the National Guard is going to be used for some kind of a coup and all this other nonsense, that doesn't help Georgians. It doesn't help the people of Georgia whom you are representing. It doesn't help the country either. This is the criticism I make of Senator Rand Paul and Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky. When you get out there and put your own dreams, wishes, and aspirations ahead of what actually gets things done, you end up giving the other side power. It is a national game at this point. And what Trump is pointing out, and as pointed out consistently, it is an international game. Either you win or you lose. There is no middle ground here where we say, okay, Panama, you just do whatever you want to do. And that doesn't screw over the economy, which, by the way, as Senator Josh Hawley points out, he's more of an interventionist populist. You know what? Yeah, he's willing to tip the scales in order to get his voters what it is that he thinks that they're asking for. He especially focuses on that regarding subsidies. And that in and of itself is important as we move into 2026, because the idea that after Trump, the Republican Party is going to go through a kind of hyper-isolationist front, I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it after 2028. Now, that brings us over to a comment that I think is pretty important that, I think probably deserves a little bit of answering here. I thought that right now, illegal immigrants can't even receive benefits, or immigrants in general can't receive benefits until 10 years after they've been here. No. Some federal benefits, they cannot receive until 10 years after they've been here. However, there is an issue regarding something called fungibility. Fungible funds are these magical pockets of money that states collect from their people in taxes. And then when the federal government comes in and funds the state is then free to use their money to spend however they choose. This is what allows illegal immigrants, especially in Minnesota. We've talked about this regarding possible SNAP fraud in 2019, 2020, 2021, in which at the same time their resettlement and migrant programs were exploding. People who had been here for not 10 years, like 10 days. SNAP benefit requests were exploding by 120 to 147%. So as far as it's currently seen, unless Minnesota natives and citizens are just popping out 13 kids every single marriage, I don't think so, Chief. Not likely. Producer Nick?
That's not even including the involvement of NGOs that are funded governmentally, involved in distribution improperly of funds to illegals.
It's true. And by the way, I want to make this, explicitly clear right now for kind of economic policy as the United States heads into 2026. There is an argument that Republicans need to focus more on affordability, but going through the weird mechanisms of saying the government will take care of you, that's not the answer. The government sucks. It's a nanny state. It doesn't now. Does the government need to uphold the law? Absolutely. Does the government need to send in federal troops when states won't uphold federal law? Absolutely. Does the government have a responsibility to put Americans first? Absolutely. Does that mean that the government needs to grossly expand SNAP benefits and the Obamacare subsidies, which, by the way, I don't think I see any way that John Thune is going to okay that when that comes through the Senate eventually. Despite what some California Republicans might be throwing together as far as various funding bills are concerned. Is the government coming in to save the day, but just with a different coat of paint going to fix anything? No. Scoreboard. Every single time the government has done so, it has wrecked the economy. It has wrecked the particular market that it gets involved in. Now, regarding Chuck Schumer's future leadership, I do want to bring things over to Seth Moulton. From, I believe, Massachusetts, who really, really went after Chuck and his shutdown answer. I think it plays into this kind of long-term strategy the Democrats have, which hasn't worked for them. So Republicans trying it is not the answer. Here you go.
Do you think that Chuck Schumer should step aside now and let someone else lead Democrats in the Senate?
I think it would be better. I think it'd be better than the status quo. And I hear this from Democrats all across Massachusetts. Everywhere I go, people say there's a leadership vacuum right now in the Democratic Party. We need new leadership. We've got to stop protecting this establishment status quo that's gotten us a second term of Donald Trump.
Okay, two things. First of all, that establishment status quo is what took Joe Biden in 2020. That's what took him as far as it did. That is, in fact, what ended up winning out in the Democrat primary, lest we all forget. Do you know who understands this? Pete Buttigieg. Of all people. Pete Buttigieg understands that the establishmentariat, the kind of Ezra Klein abundance establishment Democrat, the corporatist Democrat, as corrupt as it is the only way the Democrat Party can move forward without eating itself. Now, the majority of the party has elected the eating itself strategy. Again, not really the smartest maneuver. But anywho, President Trump did also comment earlier today on Pete Buttigieg. We referenced this at the beginning of the show. I do want to play this because it's pretty great.
Guarantee to Americans that travel is going to go back to normal once the government all the air travel
better than normal. You know why?
When the government reopens.
Yeah, sure. It'll be much better than normal because we're buying the most sophisticated avionics and technology for our control towers.
What he is saying there, I want to make this clear. Sometimes Trump, throws in, it's going to be the best logistically, empirically, deliciously, fergaliciously. Sometimes he gets into the adjective and the adverb game, and it's not as worthwhile. What he is saying here is dead on. Air traffic control and airlines in general stopped running on Windows 95 like 3 years ago. It is a horribly unupdated garbage system that needs desperate upgrades. And Pete Buttigieg had all of the time in the world to do that and instead went on maternity leave so Chasten could chest feed the kids they adopted.
And we didn't have that. We had a guy named Buttigieg. Edge, they say is the best way. Just say two edges, like off the edge of a cliff, which is where they were taking us, by the way. Edge was the Secretary of Transportation, and he spent billions of dollars trying to patch together our air traffic control system, which was a conglomeration of all different systems in all different cities. They had hundreds of companies working on it, and they were spending billions of dollars. And when they turned it on, it didn't work. It didn't even work a little bit. That's why you had a helicopter crashing into an airplane, that if we had a great system, bells and whistles would have started going off.
Now, let's talk a little bit because Pete Buttigieg, he bolted out into public view. I'm quoting this and said, just getting dinner onto the table for the kiddos. Okay. We'll deal with this later. He thinks this is going to be his moment. Pete Buttigieg has nothing at all to show for his time as the Secretary of Transportation. No upgrades. Of course, I'm not going to blame all the disasters on him, like everything from East Palestine, Ohio, to the Francis Scott Key Bridge getting destroyed, or the ship from the Mexican Navy wrecking itself on another U.S. bridge later. I'm not going to blame, those things on Pete Buttigieg. What I will say is that the Biden administration, believe it or not, in a way delivered and passed that infrastructure bill, the Build Back Better Buttigieg bonanza, and gave him a lot of money. And with $1.5 trillion in the Inflation Reduction Act, he built 8 charging stations, not like 8 full like gas stations. There's like a lot of pumps and you can pull up to anyone.
Outside grocery stores where there's like 30 of them.
Right. No, he built 8 charging stations, like 8
cars
outlets.
Can be charged at a time.
8 outlets plugged into a 2x4, and not even double outlets, 1 outlet.
It literally is just a power strip going inside the Kroger where it plugs into the wall.
Excellent. And it's only on half the time because it's powered by solar and unicorn wishes. And that's going to be the strategy? You've heard kind of a consistent theme throughout the evening that Democrats are ready to toss out the establishment and they're ready to go with the new, the bold, the exciting. Let's take a look at the bench, shall we? You have AOC, who has no idea still to this day how many branches of government that we have, who has now been reduced to making margaritas on screen. Remind you of anyone? Shout out to Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. And then you have, from that point forward, Joe Biden, who's just dead. You have Kamala Harris, who is also cackling and wine drunk and can't complete a sentence. You have Gavin Newsom, who allowed most of his state to burn down.
Peanut butter sandwich.
And can make 5-layer peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Incredible. Who else you got? Who else? Zohran Mamdani, who already the majority of what he's brought forward for his policies for New York are being smacked down harder than a midget going up against Shaquille O'Neal.
Use his proper name, Mr. Cardamom.
You got it. So at this point, who do they really have? Cory Booker? Is constipation really the Democrat ticket in 28? Who do they got? The Republicans, they've got a bench, and they've got a fairly decent plan. And right now, the Republican administration appears to be getting rid of kind of the rhino, kind of corporatist Republicans on the left of the party, and then getting rid of like the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs members on the far right side of the party. And they're actually getting some things done. And with that said, we'll see it real soon. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Take care.